They say a dog's loyalty is timeless. But how far does it really go? In the middle of a quiet cemetery, a German shepherd stood, his fur dampened by the soft mist, eyes locked on the gravestone. His name was Rex, and he had waited here, day after day, for a reunion that seemed impossible. The funeral was over, and the mourners had gone, but Rex remained, his watch unwavering. His owner, John Carter, a former U.S. Marine, had promised Rex he'd be back. That promise had been made years ago, before the war had stolen so much. Now, standing in front of the grave, John's mind raced back to the days when he and Rex were inseparable. Together, they'd weathered battles, faced dangers, and shared moments of silent understanding. But one fateful day, John had been separated from Rex. The war had torn them apart, and for years, John thought he'd lost his loyal companion forever. But Rex never forgot. He never gave up. And today, on the anniversary of John's return home, Rex had come to the one place where he knew his owner would find him. As the breeze shifted, John walked slowly toward the gravestone, his boots crunching the gravel beneath him. His heart pounded, each step filled with a mix of dread and hope. He had never imagined Rex would still be here, standing vigil all these years. As John approached, Rex's amber eyes flickered with recognition, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. John called softly, his voice breaking the silence. "Rex, it's me." The dog's tail twitched. A low whine escaped his throat, and he took a cautious step forward. Slowly, Rex's powerful body moved toward John, as if guided by an invisible force. The two of them locked eyes, a bond formed by years of separation and the promise of never being abandoned. Rex let out a joyful bark and bounded into John's arms. Tears welled up in John's eyes as he embraced the dog that had waited so long. "I'm here now, Rex," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. In that moment, everything changed. The grief, the loneliness, the years of loss, all seemed to meld away in the warmth of this reunion. The two friends, both scarred by war but healed by their unwavering loyalty, stood together, finally reunited after years apart. And as they stood there, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a soft, golden light on them both. The world seemed to breathe again, and Rex's tail wagged gently in the wind. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a miracle. John stood there, holding Rex, feeling the weight of the years meld away with each passing second. The sound of Rex's steady breathing in his arms was the only thing he could focus on. The dog's familiar scent, the warmth of his fur against John's skin, all of it brought back memories of simpler times, before everything had changed. It had been too long since he'd felt this kind of peace. As the sunlight began to break through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the graveyard, John could feel the healing begin. The days in combat, the loss of friends, the pain of being separated from his loyal companion, all seemed distant now. Rex was here, alive, and they were together once again. The bond between them was unbreakable. After a few moments, John gently set Rex down, allowing the dog to stand by his side. Rex didn't leave him. He stayed close, as if afraid that the moment would slip away. John could feel his heart swell with gratitude. He wasn't sure how it had happened, how Rex had found him, but he knew one thing for certain. The dog had never forgotten him. Through everything, Rex had waited. The bond they shared was stronger than time, stronger than distance. It was a love that could not be broken, no matter the years that had passed. "I never thought I'd see you again, buddy," John whispered as he crouched down to look Rex in the eyes. The dog's amber eyes seemed to understand every word, and for a moment, John felt like he wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't just a Marine who had fought in wars. He was someone who had been loved, deeply and unconditionally, by this dog. Together, they had faced unimaginable challenges, but nothing could have prepared John for this moment. Rex nudged his hand, as if reminding him that there was still a long road ahead, but they would walk it together. They stood there for what seemed like hours, just soaking in the warmth of the sun and the peace of the moment. Slowly, the sounds of the world around them began to return. The wind rustled through the trees, birds began to sing again, and the day seemed to unfold with a renewed sense of hope. "Let's go home, Rex," John said softly, his voice thick with emotion. It was time to leave the graveyard, but he wasn't leaving alone. He was leaving with Rex by his side. As they walked away from the cemetery, John felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Hope for the future, hope for healing, and most of all, hope that, no matter what, Rex would always be with him. The road ahead was uncertain, but with his loyal companion by his side, John knew they could face whatever came next. Together. As the days passed, John and Rex settled into a routine. Life, though still marked by the shadows of the past, began to feel a little lighter. Every morning, John would wake to find Rex lying next to him, his head resting on the side of the bed, as if guarding him through the night. The house, once filled with the echo of silence, now hummed with a quiet comfort. The mornings were spent taking walks through the woods, Rex's strong, steady presence by John's side reminding him that he wasn't alone. The world felt different with Rex there. It was as if the bond between them had healed wounds that time and distance had caused. Rex had found his way back to John, and John had found his way back to life. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them spoke volumes. Rex would nudge John's hand, seeking affection, and John would reach down to scratch behind his ears, his heart full of gratitude. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, John would catch himself thinking about the past, the war, the separation, the months and years without his loyal companion. But those thoughts no longer carried the weight they once did. With Rex at his side, John felt like he was moving forward. Every day felt like a small victory, and every small victory felt like a triumph of hope over despair. There were hard days, of course, days when the weight of everything still threatened to pull John under. But Rex was always there, a constant reminder that, no matter what, they would face it together. One afternoon, after a long walk through the woods, John and Rex returned to the house, their boots crunching on the gravel driveway. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light across the trees. John paused for a moment, looking out at the horizon, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. "We made it, buddy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Rex looked up at him, his amber eyes reflecting the same quiet understanding. There was nothing more to say. They had both been through so much, and yet here they were, together. And that was enough. As they entered the house, Rex trotted over to his bed and lay down, his body curling into a comfortable, familiar position. John sat down in his favorite chair, leaning back and closing his eyes for a moment. He could hear the soft sound of Rex's breathing in the background, steady and reassuring. It was the kind of silence that spoke of home, of healing, of a bond that no one could break. As John sat there, he realized that he had found something he hadn't thought possible, a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. Rex had given him that. And for the first time in years, John felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. With Rex by his side, he knew he could face whatever came next, because no matter what, they were in this together. The days grew longer as John and Rex settled into their new rhythm, a calm that had been absent for years. John began to spend more time outside, working on the small garden in the backyard, something he had never thought about during his time away. With each passing day, the garden grew, and so did the bond between John and Rex. Rex was always close by, lying under the shade of the trees, watching over John with unwavering loyalty. They would spend hours together, the quiet company of the dog providing John with a peace he hadn't known in a long time. The world seemed to move slower now, less rushed. John felt as though he was catching up on lost time, rebuilding the life he had left behind. One evening, as the sky began to darken and the first stars appeared, John sat on the porch steps, staring at the horizon. Rex lay beside him, his head resting on John's feet. The warmth of the day still lingered in the air, and the faint smell of earth filled the breeze. For the first time in a long while, John didn't feel the weight of the past pressing down on him. He didn't think about the war, or the loneliness, or the separation from Rex. Instead, he focused on the present, on the dog beside him, on the life they were building together. "You know, Rex," John said softly, his voice barely a whisper, "I never thought I'd find peace again. But somehow here we are." Rex let out a low whine, as if he understood, and nudged John's hand. John smiled and scratched behind Rex's ears, the bond between them deepening with each passing day. As the weeks turned into months, John found himself more and more connected to his surroundings, to the life he was creating with Rex. They took walks in the early mornings, the fresh dew on the grass and the cool morning air filling their lungs. They explored the woods near their home, discovering new paths and hidden corners of nature. John realized that, through it all, Rex had been his anchor. The dog had been there through the darkest times, and now, he was here with John, helping him rediscover a sense of hope. The seasons changed, and the world around them transformed. The colors of the trees shifted with the fall, and the chill of winter crept in, but John didn't mind. As long as Rex was by his side, the cold didn't seem so harsh. They spent the long winter nights curled up by the fire, the crackling of the wood adding a comforting rhythm to the silence. John thought about how much had changed since Rex had found him at that cemetery. He thought about how much they had both been through, and yet, here they were, stronger than ever. The bond they shared was one of survival, of trust, and of love. A bond that no time or distance could ever break. "Thank you, Rex," John whispered one night, his voice full of emotion. Rex lifted his head and looked at him with those wise, amber eyes. There was no need for words. They both knew. Together, they had found their way back to each other, and together, they would face whatever came next. Winter had settled in, and the world outside was wrapped in a blanket of white. John woke up to the crisp, morning air that filtered through the cracks of his window. He could hear the faint sound of Rex's paws tapping on the floor as the dog stretched and yawned beside him. It was their usual morning routine, one that John had come to cherish. The cold wasn't as harsh as it used to be, not when he had Rex by his side. The mornings felt different now, peaceful, quiet, and full of possibility. After a quick breakfast, they bundled up and stepped outside into the frosty morning. The air was sharp, the kind that made you feel alive, and the ground was hard beneath their boots. Rex bounded ahead, his breath puffing in the cold air, his tail wagging in excitement. John smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest as he watched the dog play in the snow. It was the small moments like this that reminded him how far they had come. Life hadn't been easy, but with Rex, it felt like there was hope for something better. The two of them made their way to the nearby woods, where the trees stood tall and silent, their branches dusted with snow. John's mind wandered as he walked, thoughts drifting back to the war and the years he had spent away from home. But they didn't stay long. Those memories didn't have the same hold on him anymore. He had Rex, and Rex had him. Together, they had created something new, something that couldn't be taken away. As they walked deeper into the woods, Rex ran ahead, his nose buried in the snow as he searched for something only he could sense. John followed at a slower pace, taking in the beauty of the world around him. The quiet was soothing, the kind that made everything feel right. As they reached a small clearing, John stopped to catch his breath. Rex, as always, came back to check on him, his amber eyes filled with loyalty. The dog never strayed far from his side, and John was grateful for that. He squatted down to scratch behind Rex's ears, feeling the softness of the dog's fur beneath his fingers. "You've been my constant, buddy," John whispered, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Rex responded with a low whine, pressing his head into John's hand as if to say, "I'm here." And for the first time, in a long time, John felt truly at peace. There was no war to fight, no battle to face, just the quiet companionship of his dog and the life they were building together. They didn't need much, just each other. As they continued their walk through the woods, John felt something shift inside of him. It was a sense of closure, of finally being able to leave the past behind. He wasn't running from anything anymore. He had Rex, and that was enough. The world was still full of challenges, but with Rex by his side, John felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they were unstoppable. Spring arrived quietly, the snow melting away to reveal the green beneath. The earth was coming back to life, and with it, John and Rex found new energy. It was a time of renewal, and for the first time in years, John felt like he was part of something larger, something that wasn't shaped by the past. Every morning, Rex led the way on their walks, his nose to the ground, sniffing every flower, every tree, as if the world was a new place to explore. John followed behind, enjoying the simple peace of being outside, with nothing to worry about except the next step. The dog's joy was infectious, and John couldn't help but smile as Rex ran circles around him. It wasn't just the fresh air that felt like a breath of life. It was the moments like this, the companionship, that made everything feel right. They had made it through the worst, together. One afternoon, While sitting on the porch with Rex curled up beside him, John thought back to the time before. The man he had been, the person he thought he had lost forever, seemed so distant now. The war had taken so much from him, but Rex had given it all back. It was in the way Rex stayed by his side, in the way the dog had never given up on him, no matter what. John reached down to scratch Rex behind the ears, and the dog leaned into his touch, his amber eyes full of trust. "You've been more than a dog, buddy," John said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been my anchor." Rex responded with a contented sigh, resting his head on John's lap. The bond between them was something John had never known before, unconditional, steady, and true. As the days turned into weeks and the weather warmed, John found himself working on small projects around the house. He planted flowers in the garden, fixed the leaky faucet, and even took the time to repair the old fence out back. These were things he had put off for years, but with Rex by his side, they felt like the first steps toward rebuilding a life. The sense of purpose John had longed for had returned, and with it came a peace he never expected. Rex was always there, his loyal eyes watching as John worked, his presence a quiet reminder that, no matter how hard the days had been, they were now on the other side. That evening, as John sat on the porch, watching the sunset with Rex by his side, he realized something important. He had spent so many years looking back, haunted by the past, that he had forgotten how to look forward. But now, with Rex at his side, he was ready. They had both been through so much, but they had made it through together. The road ahead would have its challenges, but John knew that as long as Rex was with him, he could face whatever came next. Together, they had already overcome the impossible. And together, they would face whatever the future held, side by side, with loyalty and love. The summer days drifted by slowly, each one blending into the next. John found himself waking up earlier, as the light streamed through the windows, filling the room with a soft glow. He would stretch and listen for the familiar sound of Rex's paws padding across the floor, always eager to start the day. The mornings had become their time together, when the world was still quiet, and they could enjoy the peace of simply being. John felt grateful for these moments. They had become a symbol of how far he had come, not just in his physical recovery, but in his emotional healing as well. There was a time when he thought he'd never feel whole again, but now, with Rex by his side, he had begun to understand that healing was a journey, and it didn't always happen in a straight line. Some days were harder than others, but with Rex, he had found a way forward. One morning, John and Rex were walking through the woods, the air thick with the scent of pine and fresh earth. They had come to a familiar spot by the creek, a place where John had spent hours thinking, watching the water flow by. It was a spot that always brought him clarity. As they sat by the water, John looked down at Rex, who was quietly resting at his side, his head on John's knee. The dog's eyes were closed, and his body was relaxed, a picture of contentment. John couldn't help but smile as he looked at him. He had been through so much, yet Rex was still here, loyal and strong. "You've always been there for me, Rex," John said softly, his voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and affection. "I don't think I'll ever be able to thank you enough." Rex opened one eye, then slowly raised his head, looking up at John with those familiar amber eyes. It was as if the dog understood exactly what John was saying, even without words. There was a moment of silence, just the sound of the creek flowing and the wind rustling through the leaves. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt right. John closed his eyes for a second, letting the sounds of nature fill his senses. He felt as if he was in the right place, at the right time. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The past no longer weighed as heavily on him. The scars were still there, both physical and emotional, but they no longer defined him. He had found his way back to the life he had almost lost, and he owed so much of that to Rex. The dog had been his constant, his rock, and now, they were moving forward together, side by side. The world felt different now, brighter, and full of potential. They were no longer just surviving. They were living. The rest of the day passed slowly. John and Rex made their way back home, enjoying the quiet, the simple rhythm of their lives. John had a sense of peace he hadn't known before. With Rex by his side, he knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. They had already conquered so much, and there was nothing they couldn't handle, as long as they had each other. The air was warmer now, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers and fresh grass. It was early summer, and the world around John and Rex had shifted again. The world felt full of life, full of possibilities. John spent more time outside, working on the house, fixing things he had neglected for so long. He realized that in the past, he had been too focused on surviving, too focused on the things that had been taken from him. Now, with Rex by his side, he had learned to appreciate the small moments, the things that mattered most. The sound of Rex's paws tapping on the wooden floor became the rhythm of John's day. In the mornings, they would walk through the quiet streets of their small town, the sun rising in the distance, casting a golden light over everything. John would smile to himself, thinking about how much had changed. He had found a new sense of purpose, a new way to live, and it was all thanks to Rex. He had never imagined that a dog could have such a profound impact on his life. But Rex had been his rock, his steady presence, always there when John needed him most. One evening, as John sat on the porch, watching the sunset with Rex resting beside him, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. He had found his way back to life, to peace, and it was because of Rex. The dog had been with him through everything, through the worst of times, and now they were here, together, in this moment of calm. John knew that he had found something truly special. He had found a companion, a friend, and a reminder of what it meant to truly live. "I don't think I could have made it without you," John whispered, his voice full of emotion. Rex lifted his head, his amber eyes looking directly at John, as if understanding every word. The dog gave a small sigh and rested his head back on John's lap. There was no need for more words. They both knew. The bond between them was unspoken, but it was as strong as anything John had ever known. They had been through the worst together, and now, they were living in the best of times. John leaned back, his hand resting on Rex's head, feeling the warmth of the dog's fur. The sky above was painted, in shades of orange and pink, and the air was soft, the world peaceful. For the first time in a long time, John felt truly at home. He had found his place in the world again, and it was with Rex. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they could face whatever came next. And as the stars began to appear in the night sky, John and Rex sat there, side by side, content in the quiet of the night. The world may have changed, but they had found a new kind of peace, one that neither time nor distance could take away. The seasons shifted once more, and as autumn approached, the air began to carry a crispness that signaled change. John and Rex had settled into their routine, a life marked by the quiet moments they shared and the steady rhythm of each passing day. It had been a year since they had reunited, and as the anniversary of that moment approached, John couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. His life, once full of chaos and uncertainty, now felt rooted, grounded in the present. He had Rex to thank for that. The dog had been there for him in ways that John hadn't even realized he needed, and now, they were inseparable. They had become a team in every sense of the word, facing the world together, side by side. One afternoon, as the golden light of fall poured over the land, John and Rex found themselves at the creek, the place where they often came to clear their minds. The sound of the water flowing over the rocks was calming, and John closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the peace around him. Rex sat next to him, his body close but his eyes alert, always on guard. That was the thing about Rex. He never let his guard down. Even in moments of calm, he remained vigilant, always watching, always protecting. John smiled and ran his hand over the dog's head, feeling the warmth of his fur beneath his fingers. "You know, Rex," John said softly, "I used to think that I was broken, that I'd never be the same again. But you've shown me that there's a way forward. I don't have to be stuck in the past." Rex turned his head, meeting John's gaze with those deep amber eyes, as if to say, "I've always been here." And in that moment, John realized how much Rex had truly changed his life. The dog had given him more than just companionship. Rex had given him the strength to heal, to move forward, to face the future without fear. As the days grew shorter and the leaves turned brilliant shades of orange and red, John felt a sense of closure that had eluded him for so long. The past no longer held him captive. With Rex by his side, he had learned to let go of the things that had once defined him and to embrace the life he was building. They spent their days walking through the woods, enjoying the simple things, a shared moment of quiet, A playful chase through the fallen leaves, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. John never took these moments for granted. He knew how fragile life could be, how quickly things could change. But with Rex by his side, he felt ready for whatever the future held. The bond they shared was unspoken, but it was stronger than anything John had ever known. And as the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, John knew that no matter what, he and Rex would face it all together. They had already overcome so much, and together, they could handle anything that came their way. The first snow of winter fell softly, blanketing the world around John and Rex in a peaceful silence. The days had grown shorter, and the nights colder, but neither John nor Rex minded the change. They had become accustomed to the rhythm of the seasons, the subtle shifts that marked time in a way that no calendar could. They were no longer just passing through the days. They were living them, fully and without hesitation. John stood by the window one evening, watching the snow accumulate on the ground outside. He could hear Rex breathing softly behind him, the dog lying on the rug, content and calm. It was in these quiet moments that John felt the most at peace. The world was still, and for the first time in a long time, John felt a sense of belonging, of being exactly where he was meant to be. Rex had been with him through the darkest of times, and now, they were here, in this small house, with nothing but each other. John looked down at the dog, who had been his constant companion, his protector, and his friend. Rex had never once faltered, never once let him down. The loyalty of the dog had carried him through the hardest moments of his life. John had learned more from Rex than he had ever expected. He had learned what it meant to trust, to love unconditionally, and to never give up. "You've been everything to me, Rex," John said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Rex lifted his head and looked up at him, those amber eyes filled with understanding. The dog didn't need words to know what John was feeling. They had always communicated without speaking, their bond stronger than anything that could be said. John sat down on the couch, patting the seat beside him. Rex immediately jumped up, settling at John's feet, content to be close. They didn't need to fill the silence with words, just being together was enough. As the snow continued to fall outside, John reflected on how far he had come. He had never imagined a life like this, a life full of peace and hope. There was still so much to be thankful for. The road ahead was uncertain, but John knew that with Rex by his side, he could face anything that came his way. Together, they had already conquered so much, and together, they would face whatever the future held. They had proven that no matter the hardships, no matter the distance, they were stronger together. The warmth of the fire crackled softly in the background, the only sound breaking the quiet stillness of the evening. As John looked out at the snow-covered landscape, he realized that he had found something more valuable than any material possession. He had found peace, love, and the understanding that no matter where life took him, he would never be alone as long as he had Rex. Winter had fully taken hold, and the world outside had turned into a quiet, snow-covered wonderland. John and Rex had settled into their home, finding comfort in the simplicity of each day. The cold winds outside were no match for the warmth inside, where the fire crackled softly in the hearth. They spent their days mostly indoors, with John working on small projects around the house, while Rex lay by his feet, always nearby. There was something about the stillness of the season that made John feel even more grounded. Every evening, he and Rex would sit by the fire, the flickering flames casting soft shadows on the walls. John would stroke Rex's fur, grateful for the companionship the dog offered, and for the peace they had found together. As the days passed, John found himself reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. He had come so far from the man he had been when he first returned home. The darkness of the past still lingered at times, but with Rex by his side, it no longer had the same hold on him. Rex had been his anchor through it all, always patient, always understanding. It was in the way the dog never judged, never questioned, but simply offered his loyalty and companionship. One night, as the snow continued to fall outside, John sat alone in the living room after Rex had settled on his bed for the night. The house was quiet, and the world outside felt like it had disappeared, leaving only the two of them. John looked around, his gaze landing on the family photo on the mantelpiece. He had always kept it there, a reminder of the life he had once had. But now, that life felt distant, like a dream he had once lived but could no longer touch. The life he had now, with Rex, was the one that mattered. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was enough. He had learned to appreciate the small moments, the quiet evenings, the walks in the snow, and the simple joy of having Rex by his side. The road ahead still felt uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, John felt like he could face it with hope. He had Rex, and together, they could face whatever came next. As the fire slowly burned down to embers, John stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the snow-covered yard, the world outside still and calm. He knew that the future wasn't something that could be predicted, but with Rex by his side, he was ready to face it, one day at a time. The dog had already shown him that no matter how difficult things got, there was always a way through. And as long as they had each other, that was enough. The new year arrived quietly, the days blending together in a seamless rhythm that felt both familiar and comforting. John found himself waking up with a sense of purpose, no longer weighed down by the past, but embracing the present for what it was. Rex was always there, a steady presence in his life, his fur now thickening with the winter months, a reminder of the passage of time. The bond between them had deepened in ways John had never expected. The dog had given him more than just companionship. He had given him the strength to face the future, to embrace life again, even after everything that had happened. One morning, John stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the quiet snow-covered landscape. The world was still, as if waiting for something, and for a moment, John felt the weight of it all. But then, as if by instinct, Rex came trotting into the room, his tail wagging in that way that always made John smile. The dog stopped by his side, looking up at him with those familiar amber eyes, as if to say, "You're not alone." And in that moment, John realized something. He hadn't just survived the past, he had learned to live again, to move forward. And Rex had been by his side every step of the way, teaching him what it meant to truly live, to embrace the moments of joy and peace that came their way. The house was quiet now, the fire crackling softly in the background. Rex had settled by the hearth, his body curled up comfortably as he watched the flames dance. John moved over to sit beside him, his hand gently stroking the dog's fur. The simple act of being together, in the warmth of the house, felt like a victory. There had been a time when John had doubted whether he would ever feel whole again, whether he would ever find peace. But now, with Rex by his side, he understood that peace wasn't something that came all at once. It was something that was built, slowly and steadily, day by day. And it wasn't about perfection. It was about acceptance, about finding contentment in the quiet moments. They had both been through so much, but together, they had found their way back to each other, and that was all that mattered. John sat back, looking around at the home they had created, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of gratitude for everything that had led him to this point. He had found his way out of the darkness, and now, with Rex, he was ready to embrace whatever came next. Together, they had already overcome the impossible, and together, they would face whatever the future held. The road ahead might be uncertain, but John knew one thing for sure. As long as Rex was by his side, they could handle anything. Spring arrived quietly, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. John stood on the porch, looking out at the budding trees and the vibrant flowers starting to bloom. The warmth of the sun was a welcome change after the cold winter, and as the days grew longer, John found himself feeling more hopeful than ever. He had come so far since that first moment he had reunited with Rex, unsure of what the future would hold. Now, standing here, with the dog by his side, he realized how much they had both overcome. The life they had built together was not perfect, but it was real. It was filled with small moments of joy, quiet evenings by the fire, and the steady presence of a loyal friend. John smiled as he watched Rex chasing after a butterfly in the yard. The dog's energy was infectious, and it reminded John of the simple pleasures in life. Things he had once taken for granted but now cherished deeply. It had been a year since Rex had found him again, and in that time, everything had changed. John had learned to live again, to find meaning in the small things, to embrace each day with gratitude. Rex had taught him what it meant to truly be present, to appreciate the beauty in the world around him, even in the darkest of times. As the seasons shifted, John felt a sense of peace settle over him. The past no longer had the same grip on him. He had let go of the things he couldn't change and focused on what he could. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, John felt ready to face it. With Rex by his side, there was no challenge they couldn't tackle together. They were a team, and nothing could break the bond. They shared. That evening, as the sun set behind the trees, John and Rex sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. The air was warm, and the sounds of nature filled the silence. It was in these quiet moments that John realized how much he had learned. He had learned that healing wasn't a straight line, that some days would be harder than others, but that each day was a new opportunity to grow. And with Rex by his side, he knew that he wasn't walking this path alone. They had already faced so much, and yet, here they were, stronger than ever. Together, they had found peace. Together, they had found hope. And together, they would continue to face whatever the future held, one day at a time.